What on earth happened to you? I couldn't help but shout at the sight I stumbled upon at my parents' house. My brother's wife, who lives with my parents, was sitting on the floor alone, crying and trying to soothe her baby. Also, her hair, eyebrows, and even eyelashes were unevenly cut short, and she has bruises on her face and arms. Something bad happened. When I asked her, she told me something I could hardly believe. Apparently, as soon as she married my brother and started living with my parents, their attitudes changed completely. She was forced to do housework, verbally abused, and even physically assaulted when she tried to argue. She was even half forced into getting pregnant with the baby she was soothing. She once suggested getting a divorce, but my brother and parents were furious. They hurled all kinds of verbal abuse at her, and that's when her hair and eyebrows were cut. I was speechless at her pitiful condition. Being someone who experienced similar treatment myself, I couldn't just ignore it. With that in mind, I called my brother, pretending nothing was wrong. Sorry, but we're on a cruise tour with our parents and my wife right now. It's so much fun, I don't want to come back. My wife is thrilled about this really expensive trip. I listened to my brother's irritating laughter with a really cold feeling. Which part of his story says my wife is thrilled? My brother's wife is trembling, holding her baby next to me right now. I hung up the phone, trying to suppress my boiling anger. To punish them and help my brother's wife and baby, I decided to take immediate action. A few days later. We are truly sorry. Why did my previously arrogant brother and parents suddenly apologize? My name is Emma. I'm a 27-year-old office worker. I'm single but I enjoy my job and have fulfilling days. Although I live a happy life now, I felt that living was painful when I was a child. I have a brother, and my parents have favored him since we were kids. My brother was always prioritized, and I was raised with constant discrimination. I was told, housework is a work for women, so learn it now, and made to do chores instead of my mother, while my brother didn't even have to take his dishes to the sink after meals. Clothes were another issue. I was told, it's a waste to buy you clothes since your size changes quickly, while my brother frequently got new clothes. My clothes were always oversized and tattered, and I would go home right after school instead of playing with friends, so my classmates often teased me. I spent my childhood enduring that pain every day. The longer I stayed at my parents' house, the more I would be treated like a slave. With that sense of urgency, I studied hard to escape and applied to a university with a scholarship program far from home. The result was that I passed. I was granted a waiver for the admission fee and part of the tuition. You want to go to college? There's no way a fool like you could get in. It must be some mistake. If you absolutely want to go to college, find a way to pay for it yourself. When I told my parents I got into college, their response was, as expected, cold words. No matter how much I explained about the scholarship, they just laughed and said, stop joking around. Giving up on reasoning with my unreasonable parents, I seized the chance when they and my brother were out, moved out in a rush like an escape, and started living alone as I began university. Naturally, my parents didn't support me financially, so while I focused on my studies after starting the semester, I also worked hard at part-time jobs to cover my living expenses. During this time, I would occasionally go back home, but after graduation, I stopped going back altogether. One reason was that I hated being bossed around and insulted by my parents every time I went home, but another reason was that I didn't want to see my brother. Raised with my parents' excessive affection, my brother thinks he's special and has a very arrogant attitude towards me. Studying hard in college and working at night, it must be tough being so unfortunate, huh? His sarcastic words, implying he was better than me, always made me feel awful. After becoming an adult, I finally accepted that there was no point in returning to a home with a brother who treated me like garbage and parents who treated me like a slave. Several years have passed since I started working, bringing us to the present. One day, I got a rare call from my mother. Apparently, my brother was getting married, and she told me to come home to meet my future sister-in-law. I understood it was good to meet the person who would become part of our family. However, I still didn't want to see my parents or brother. Would they scold me for not coming home for years? Would they introduce me more as a slave rather than family? I had my fears, but ultimately, I couldn't resist the desire to meet my soon-to-be sister-in-law, so I decided to visit them. On the day of the meeting, I was nervous for many reasons. Right after arriving at my parents' house, they nagged me a bit, but to my surprise, the meeting went smoothly. My brother's wife is named Lily, and she was as cute as her name suggests. I wasn't belittled in front of her and was properly introduced as family, not a slave. My brother and parents were kind to her too. My brother and his wife plan to live with my parents after getting married. I worried they might mistreat her as they did to me, but it seemed I didn't need to worry. Seeing my parents and brother's wife chatting pleasantly, I secretly sighed in relief. Even after a short conversation, it was clear that she has a kind heart. I felt positively about her, enough to secretly wish for her happiness. However, since that meeting, I haven't seen my brother and his wife or returned home, so we became distant again. About 2 years later, I suddenly realized that the situation I had feared is happening again. That day, I was attending a friend's wedding. After the ceremony ended in the evening and we left, I suddenly became concerned about my brother's wife and decided to drop by my parents' house. When I arrived at my parents' house, I felt something was off. There was no sign of anyone inside, yet the front door was unlocked. What if there was a burglar? With that thought in mind, I cautiously entered the house and faintly heard a baby crying. It didn't seem to be a burglar, but I hadn't heard about my brother and his wife having a baby, so I was confused about the situation. I decided to find the baby first and searched the house. I searched the living room, the guest room, my parents' bedroom, and my brother's bedroom but couldn't find anyone. The only room left was my old room, the smallest one in the house. When I opened the door to that room, I finally found my brother's wife. However, I was in complete shock at her terrible condition. "Lily, what on earth happened to you?" My screaming-like voice made her turn towards me, startled. Her hair, eyebrows, and even eyelashes were unevenly cut short, and she had bruises and what looked like scratch marks on her face and arms. When I first saw her, she was sitting in a corner of the room, crying while trying to soothe her baby. Beside this bizarre situation, there was no sign of anyone else in the house. It was clear something had happened. "Sis." Hearing her weak voice and seeing her tears, I rushed to Lily and rubbed her back. She started sobbing even more, so I continued to rub her back quietly until she calmed down. After a while, she and the baby both calmed down, and the story she told me was unbelievable. Apparently, as soon as she married my brother and started living at my parents' house, the kind and affectionate attitudes of my brother and parents changed completely. "If you're up, hurry and make breakfast. We're starving. I married you, a slow and useless woman, so be grateful. Are you talking back? How dare you, you're just my wife." The kind words and looks from before the marriage were gone, replaced by forced housework and verbal abuse. If she argued or disobeyed, she would even be physically abused. She was half forced into pregnancy, and both during and after her pregnancy, she was treated harshly without any care. Every day she was bombarded with insults that denied her dignity, making her lose the will to live at times. However, she loved her child very much and managed to stay sane for the sake of her baby. Realizing that her environment wasn't good for her child, she made a big decision and asked my brother for a divorce. Upon hearing this, my brother and parents were furious. They hurled all sorts of abusive words at her, and that's when her hair and eyebrows were cut and shaved. Her appearance was completely ruined on top of having her dignity shattered, and since then, she hasn't been able to leave the house. My parents passed away a long time ago, and I have no siblings or relatives to rely on. So I feel sorry for my child, but we have no choice but to continue living miserably here. Tears fell from her eyes again as she spoke without any shred of hope. I was speechless at the severity of the situation. After the initial shock passed, the first thing I felt was anger towards my family. The bad feeling I had before my brother's marriage was not unfounded. My brother's wife was being mistreated and abused in my place. Why would they do such a thing? Do they need to feel superior over someone that badly? Questions kept coming, but for now, they could wait. I had to save Lily and the baby from my cruel brother and parents. Where are they now? They said they would be gone for about a week. So, they probably won't be back for a few days. So I decided to pretend I didn't know anything and try to find out what was going on with my brother and parents. Honestly, I didn't want to contact them or hear their voices. But if I didn't try, my brother's wife and baby would continue to suffer forever. I didn't want that. With that thought in mind, I dialed my brother's number with trembling fingers. My brother, in a surprisingly good mood, didn't question my unusual call and answered my questions. I need to take care of something. Are you at home right now? Sorry, but we're on a cruise tour with our parents and my wife. It's a family thing, you know. Unlike you, I'm rich. Trying not to sigh at his casual insult, I replied, "Oh, that's nice, good for you," and asked when he was coming back. It's a week-long tour, so we'll be back after 5 days. It's so much fun, I don't want to come back. The cruise ship doesn't even sway, and the food is great. My wife is thrilled with this really expensive trip. I listened to my brother's irritating laughter with a cold feeling. Which part of his story says my wife is thrilled? My brother's wife is trembling, holding her baby next to me right now. I hung up the phone, trying to suppress my boiling anger. The deadline before they return home was 5 days. I needed to act quickly to punish them and save my brother's wife and baby. All right. I gathered my resolve, decided to take my brother's wife and baby to my home, and made a call to someone. 5 days later, my mother called in a furious rage. Why did you take Lily without permission? I had left a note in the living room saying, "Lily is staying at my place," for my parents and brother to find when they got back. Apparently, they had come home and read it. To my angry mother, I calmly replied, "I heard you were on a trip, so I was being considerate and didn't bother you." My words only fueled my mother's anger. Don't give me that nonsense. Where are you right now? At Grandma's house. What, you mean, at my in-laws' place? My mother seemed taken aback, and her anger deflated a bit. Taking advantage of the pause, I continued. Grandpa and Grandma said they want to talk to you guys after a long time, so come over. You need to pick up Lily too, right? My mother was momentarily at a loss for words at my suggestion but eventually agreed reluctantly. About an hour later, my parents and brother arrived at my grandparents' house. We're back. It's so relaxing to be home. Here, if you don't mind. Actually, our son took us on a trip, and these are souvenirs. Thanks for letting me take time off work. I was able to be a good son and had a great time. They plastered smiles on their faces, trying to flatter my grandparents, handing over a large amount of sweets and starting to chat. My grandfather silenced them with a sharp rebuke. Silence. I've heard everything about what you did to Lily. Honestly, you haven't changed at all. My parents and brother trembled and fell silent at my grandfather's voice. My grandparents actually run a company, and my parents and brother work there. Because of their employer-employee relationship, my grandparents are the only people my parents and brother can't defy. My grandparents have always cared about me. They repeatedly warned my parents to treat me the same as my brother, who they favored, so my parents never treated me poorly in front of my grandparents. After I went to university, my grandparents supported me financially, unlike my parents who didn't give me a single dollar. Although my grandparents' house was far from both my parents' home and my college, making frequent visits difficult, they were the most reliable family members I had. 5 days ago, I consulted my grandparents about my brother's wife. I asked if there was any way to help her, as she was being mistreated just like, or even worse than, I had been. And if there was a way to punish my parents and brother for bullying and hurting Lily. My grandparents, upon hearing what happened, realized that my parents had not changed since they used to mistreat me, and they were furious. Lily, I am truly sorry for what our foolish son, his wife, and our grandson did to you. I know an apology can't make up for what you've suffered, but please, let us apologize. My brother's wife was shocked as my grandparents sincerely asked for an apology. Eventually, my grandparents said, "We will punish them, so please leave this matter to us," and then took action. And now, my grandparents, with stern expressions, looked at my parents and brother and began to speak. As of today, you are fired from our company. We've also decided to sell the house you're living in. What? My parents' faces turned pale at my grandparents' punishment. My parents got pregnant with me when they were young, before they had stable jobs. My grandparents, unable to watch their instability, gave them positions in their company and provided them with a house. That house is the one where my parents and my brother's family are currently living. Although my parents live there, the house is still in my grandfather's name. That's why they were able to proceed with the sale quickly. There's already an inquiry for a viewing next week. So, pack your things and get out. When my grandfather said this coldly, my parents collapsed to their knees. My mother and brother were too shocked to move, but my father desperately knelt at my grandfather's feet. We were wrong. I'm sorry, we'll apologize properly and truly reflect this time. So please, don't fire us or sell the house. Both of you should apologize too, he shouted, hitting them, and my mother also knelt in front of my grandparents. We are so sorry. We won't do anything like this again, so please forgive us. But my grandfather continued to scold them. You haven't reflected at all. You're apologizing to the wrong people. The ones you should truly apologize to are Emma and Lily. Upon hearing my grandfather's words, my brother's wife, who had been hiding in the next room, opened the door. At that moment, my brother tried to rush at her, shouting, "It's all your fault," so I held him back with all my strength. Let go. Who do you think you are, Emma? There's no way I'm letting go. You don't understand why Grandpa is angry at all. Watching us struggle, my brother's wife quietly said, "I'm going to report you to the police." My brother's eyes widened at her words. It was clearly unexpected that she, who had become so submissive from their treatment, would declare that she would report them to the police. In fact, ever since I took her out 5 days ago, I had been advising her to consult the police. However, she couldn't forget the mistreatment from my brother and parents and stubbornly refused, fearing they might get back at her. But watching the interactions between my grandparents and my parents, her feelings seemed to change. She realized that my brother and parents could only act tough with those weaker than themselves. And she made up her mind. I'm going to tell the police everything about the horrible treatment I've endured from all of you since we got married. She had been secretly considering divorcing my brother since she had the baby and had been recording the violence and verbal abuse with audio and photos. They also forced cutting of her hair also constituted as an assault, so her current appearance could serve as evidence. Realizing that the tables had completely turned, my brother and parents hurriedly knelt in front of Lily. We're really sorry for everything. We regret hurting you. I'll never treat you badly again. I promise. Please, just don't bring in the police. My parents were voicing apologies, but it was clear there was no genuine remorse, they were just begging not to be reported to the police. My brother's wife and grandparents seemed to feel the same, so we exchanged glances and shook our heads. I don't need such insincere apologies. I'm divorcing my husband and going to the police. Don't ever talk to me again. Her firm stance left my brother and parents speechless. Then my grandparents chased them out, saying, "Don't go near Lily again," and they left the house dejectedly. After that, the divorce between my brother and his wife was finalized. As declared, my brother and parents were fired from my grandparents' company and they also lost their house, so they moved into a shabby apartment nearby. Although the police case my brother's wife filed resulted in a suspended sentence, many neighbors had seen her in her miserable state, and word of their deeds quickly spread, leading them to live a life of shame within the neighborhood. During the divorce, my brother was sued for alimony through her lawyer. However, having spent most of his savings on the recent cruise tour, my brother had to take out a loan to pay the alimony. But being unemployed, my brother had no means to repay the debt. Soon after, my brother was reportedly taken away by some shady men who came to collect the debt. With my brother's wife, who had been doing all the housework, gone, my parents' house gradually became dirtier, and they started fighting and yelling at each other every day. If you're home all the time, at least do the housework. You're a woman, aren't you? Shut up. You're home all the time too, aren't you? Due to the rumors spreading in the neighborhood, my father couldn't get a permanent job and only managed to get registered with a seasonal work. However, the stress of being bossed around by younger supervisors made him quit soon after. With no source of income, my parents became desperate and called me asking for financial assistance. Please, Emma. It's a child's duty to help their struggling parents, right? Even now, my father's attitude implied they were superior, and I was too stunned to speak. If you call yourself parents, you should have raised me properly. Don't call me again. I heard yelling on the other end, but I ignored it, hung up, and blocked their number. Since then, I don't know where they are or what they're doing. My sister-in-law started working at my grandparents' company. At first, she seemed scared of people, but as her hair and eyebrows grew back, she gradually regained her smile. We started going out for drinks and lunch regularly, and now we've become good friends. Seeing her gradually become brighter, I'm truly glad I found and helped her back then. Her baby is also growing up well, which is a relief. I want to continue watching her baby's growth together with her and my grandparents.